In the 10th year of the 31st millennium, a shadow fell over the Sol system. The Alpha Legion, masters of deception and sabotage, had slipped into the heart of the Imperium, undetected, unchallenged, and unseen. Their mission, ordained by Horus Lupercal, was simple: to soften Terra's defenses for the coming storm. Alfarius, one of the Legion's twin primarchs, led the charge, his 200-ship fleet lurking in the asteroid fields beyond Pluto like a pack of wolves. What followed was not a battle but a symphony of chaos, one that would echo through the system for 4 long years. The Alpha Legion's tactics were drawn from the pages of the Horusheresy, Deliverance Lost, a playbook of infiltration so precise it bordered on art. Their operatives, using gene mask technology stolen from Dark Mechanicum archives, replaced Imperial officials in Terra's defense ministry. They forged orders diverting supply convoys to abandoned outposts. They whispered lies in taverns and market squares. The Emperor has abandoned us. Horus comes to free us from tyranny. By 30,012, M31, riots had erupted in the hive cities of Necromunda, and a cadre of corrupted tech priests had begun sabotaging the void shield generators surrounding Terra's Sanctum Imperialis, the golden-walled core of the Emperor's power. On Terra, Rogaldorn, Primarch of the Imperial Fists, the Emperor's wall, knew something was wrong. The reports he received were contradictory. Supply ships vanished without a trace, guard rotations were altered without his approval, and a squad of his Astartes had been found dead in a maintenance tunnel, their throats slit with blades bearing the Alpha Legion's Hydra sigil. Dawn was a Primarch of order. Chaos unsettled him. He paced the command center of the Sanctum Imperialis, his boots clicking against the marble floor, his hands clasped behind his back. "I'm not destroying homes," he muttered to himself, recalling the day he ordered the demolition of 3 hive districts to expand the Sanctum's defensive perimeter. "I am forging humanity's last fortress." The words, borrowed from Rogaldorn, the Emperor's crusader, were a mantra, one he repeated to silence the voice of doubt that nagged at him. In 30,014, M31, Alfarius struck. His fleet emerged from the asteroid field and attacked Pluto, the outermost defense of the Sol system. The battle was brief but brutal. The Imperial Fists, led by Dawn himself, fought with the fury of men defending their home. Dawn and Alfarius clashed atop Pluto's icy surface, their power swords ringing as they traded blows. Alfarius, ever the trickster, tried to distract Dawn with illusions of fallen Imperial Fists, but Dawn saw through the ruse. With a single swing, he cleaved Alfarius' torso in 2. As the Primarch's body fell, it dissolved into a cloud of smoke, a hologram. The real Alfarius, Dawn realized too late, had already downloaded the Sol system's defense schematics into his ship's databanks. By the time Dawn's fleet destroyed the Alpha Legion's cruiser, the damage was done. Elsewhere in the galaxy, other loyalist legions fought to reach Terra. Jagatai Khan, Primarch of the White Scars, had been battling orks in the Chondak system when word of Horus's betrayal reached him. The White Scars, a legion of hunters and raiders, were masters of hit-and-run warfare, their culture rooted in the nomadic tribes of Chogoris, Khan's homeworld. Khan split his fleet into small strike forces, as described in Jagatai Khan, Warhawk of Chogoris, and launched a guerrilla campaign against Horus's supply lines. They destroyed the Calixis hub, a major traitor supply depot, and ambushed a convoy of Death Guard ships carrying plague bombs. But the cost was high. By the time the White Scars reached the Sol system, their numbers had been cut in half. The stage was set. The Alpha Legion's infiltration had weakened Terra's defenses. The White Scars and Blood Angels were en route, and Horus, his fleet massing at the edge of the system, prepared to strike. On the first day of the 14th year's first month, the sky above Terra darkened. Horus's fleet, 10,000 ships strong, emerged from the warp, their hulls black as pitch, their banners emblazoned with the symbols of chaos. The attack began at once. Perturabo, Primarch of the Iron Warriors, and a strategic genius of unparalleled skill, led his legion against Uranus. Ezekiel Abaddon, Little Horus, so named for his resemblance to the War Master, attacked Pluto. Their goal, to seize the Elysian Gate and Stygian Gate, 2 ancient Golden Age starports that bypassed the Mandeville Point. The Mandeville Point, as defined in the Warhammer 40,000 core rulebook, is the safest point in a star system to enter or exit the warp, a region where the gravitational pull of stars and planets is weakest. Ships using the Mandeville Point suffer minimal damage and avoid detection. The Elysian and Stygian gates, however, were far more powerful. They allowed ships to enter the warp directly from the Sol system, cutting travel time by 70%. For Horus, seizing the gates meant he could reinforce his army quickly before Guilliman's ultramarines or the Lion's dark angels arrived. On Pluto, Abaddon's fleet outnumbered the Imperial Fists 3-1. The defense was led by Sigismund, captain of the Imperial Fist's first company and the first Emperor's champion, a warrior whose skill with the sword was legendary. Pluto's defensive perimeter was a masterpiece of Dawn's design, a network of artificial satellites armed with macro cannons and missile launchers, all linked by a void shield. For 3 days, the Imperial Fists held out. They destroyed dozens of traitor ships, but Abaddon's forces kept coming. On the 4th day, Dawn ordered a retreat. The Imperial Fists fled, leaving the satellite forts behind. Abaddon's fleet swarmed the forts, eager to claim their prize. That was when Dawn's trap was sprung. The tech priests, who had built the forts, detonated their cores. The explosion was catastrophic. Plasma and shrapnel tore through the traitor fleet, destroying a third of Abaddon's ships. As the traitors reeled, the Imperial Fists turned and attacked. Sigismund, his chainsword, black sword glowing with holy light, led the charge. He boarded Abaddon's flagship, a smaller vessel also named Vengeful Spirit, distinct from Horus's own Monk battleship, and challenged Abaddon to single combat. The duel, described in the Horusheresy, The Lost and the Damned, was a clash of titans. Sigismund's blade danced, cutting through Abaddon's power armor like paper. Abaddon, fueled by chaos, swung his axe with brute force, but Sigismund dodged each blow. Finally, Sigismund struck his sword, severed Abaddon's right hand at the wrist. Chaos energy erupted from the wound, searing Sigismund's left shoulder. Abaddon roared in pain, but he did not fall. He ordered his crew to abandon the ship, and as he fled, he vowed revenge. On Uranus, Perturabo's attack was a masterclass in siege warfare. The Iron Warriors, a legion of engineers and siege specialists, advanced with mechanical precision. They destroyed Uranus's defense platforms one by one, their macro cannons reducing the loyalist ships to scrap. Perturabo, a Primarch who saw war as a science, had planned every move, down to the second. As recorded in Perturabo, the Hammer of Olympia, he had studied Uranus's defense line for months, identifying its weak points and exploiting them. By the end of the week, Uranus had fallen, but Horus's victory was marred by a surprise attack. Lemon Russ, Primarch of the Space Wolves, had been lying in wait in the Trisolaris system. He had heard of Horus's approach and had decided to take matters into his own hands. Russ, a warrior of great strength and courage, had been given the Spear of Russ by the Emperor, a weapon infused with anti-chaos energy, capable of destroying even Primarchs. As Horus's fleet passed through the Trisolaris system, Russ and a squad of Space Wolves boarded Horus's flagship, the Vengeful Spirit. The attack, detailed in the Horusheresy, Wolf King, was a disaster. Russ fought his way to Horus's throne room, his spear raised. He struck Horus in the chest, and for a moment it seemed the War Master would fall. The spear of Russ's energy burned through Horus's body, purging the chaos corruption from his veins. But Horus was not so easily defeated. He called upon the Chaos Gods, and with a scream he sacrificed 1,000 psychers, individuals with innate psychic abilities, their life force, a fragile fuel for the Imperium, yet prone to chaos corruption. The energy from their deaths healed his wound, and he struck Russ down with a single blow. Russ's Space Wolves, fighting valiantly, managed to carry their Primarch to safety, but Russ was gravely injured. With Pluto and Uranus fallen, Horus's fleet moved inward. The Sol system's outer defenses had been breached. Terra was next. Beneath the Sanctum Imperialis, in the depths of Terra, a war raged, a war few knew existed. The Webway, a network of tunnels that spanned the galaxy, had been the Emperor's greatest hope. He had spent centuries building a portal to the Webway beneath the Sanctum, hoping to free humanity from its dependence on the warp. But Magnus the Red, Primarch of the Thousand Suns, had ruined everything. In his arrogance, Magnus had used his psychic powers to break the Emperor's psychic barrier, opening the webway to the warp. Now, daemons poured through the portal, their screams echoing through the tunnels. The Emperor, trapped on the Golden Throne, could do nothing but watch. The Golden Throne, a machine of ancient design, was supposed to power the webway portal and keep the daemons out. But with the barrier broken, the Emperor was forced to use his own psychic energy to hold the daemons back. He sat on the throne, his body weakening by the day, as the daemons clawed at the edges of his mind. To defend the webway, the Emperor sent his most trusted warriors, the Custodes and the Silent Sisterhood. The Custodes, the Emperor's personal bodyguards, were Astartes of unparalleled skill, their golden power armor shining, their weapons forged in the fires of Terra. The Silent Sisterhood, the Witch Seekers, were women with the rare ability to nullify psychic energy, a power that made them deadly to daemons. Together they launched the Webway War. The fighting was knee. As described in Master of Mankind, the Custodes and Silent Sisterhood fought in narrow tunnels, their backs to the wall. The daemons, twisted creatures of shadow and flame, attacked in waves. A custodian's spear would pierce a daemon's heart, only for another to take its place. A Silent Sister's sword would cut through a daemon's wing, but the creature would reform seconds later. The casualties were staggering. 90% of the Custodes and nearly all of the Silent Sisterhood fell in battle. Amid the chaos, the Emperor made a desperate choice. He ordered his tech priests to bring him 1,000 psykers. These psykers, drawn from across Terra, were to be sacrificed, their psychic energy used to fuel the Emperor's powers. As the psykers died, their energy flowed into the Emperor. With a roar, he unleashed a wave of light, banishing the daemons from the webway. But it was not enough. The daemons would return, and the Emperor could not keep sacrificing psykers forever. Then, a miracle happened. Vulcan, Primarch of the Salamanders, returned. Vulcan was an immortal, a gift from the Emperor, and he had been killed and resurrected countless times. His latest death had been at the hands of Conrad Kurtze, but he had risen again on his homeworld of Nocturne. As recorded in Vulcan, Lord of Drakes, Vulcan's resurrections were not without cost. He retained the memories of each death, and the pain of Kurtze's torture haunted him every night. When he arrived on Terra, the Emperor gave him a mission to guard the webway portal. If the daemons broke through, Vulcan was to activate a device that would destroy Terra, preventing the webway from becoming a permanent daemon portal. Vulcan accepted the mission. He stood guard of the portal, his hammer of dawn in hand, and waited. For weeks he fought off daemons that slipped through the Emperor's defenses. He thought of his sons, the Salamanders, and of the people of Nocturne. He thought of the pain of his resurrections, and of the hope that one day the war would end. But as the days turned into weeks, Vulcan began to doubt. Would the Emperor really let him destroy Terra? He wondered, but would humanity survive? The Webway War raged on, hidden from the eyes of the loyalists fighting above. It was a war of attrition, a war that the Emperor was losing. But Vulcan stood firm. He was the last line of defense, and he would not fail. On the 13th day of the second month, Horus gave the order to attack. His fleet, now positioned above Terra, unleashed a storm of fire. Macro cannons fired, their shells the size of buildings, crashing into Terra's surface. Laser beams cut through the atmosphere, incinerating everything in their path. The sky turned black with smoke, and the ground shook as if the world itself was dying. This was the Great Bombardment, the beginning of the end. But Terra's defenses held. The Aegis of Terra, a network of 12 layered void shields surrounding the Sanctum Imperialis, absorbed the brunt of the attack. As explained in the horusheresy Siege of Terra, Saturnine, each layer of the Aegis was powered by a team of 100 tech priests who worked tirelessly to repair the shields as they took damage. The shields glowed with a golden light, churning the traitors' shells to dust and reflecting their lasers back into space. Horus, watching from the bridge of the vengeful spirit, grew impatient. He had expected the Aegis to fall within days, but it remained intact. He ordered his fleet to increase the bombardment, but it was no use. The Aegis was too strong. Finally, Horus made a decision. He would send his ground forces to Terra. They would destroy the void shield generators from below, and then the fleet would finish the job. The first wave of landing craft descended from the sky. They carried mutant humans, creatures twisted by chaos, their bodies covered in scales and horns. These mutants, who had been oppressed by the Imperium for centuries, had joined Horus's cause in the hope of revenge. They charged at the Sanctum Imperialis's outer walls, their screams filling the air. Behind them came the traitors' mortal auxiliaries, men and women who had been corrupted by chaos, their eyes glowing with fanaticism. The Loyalists' first line of defense was a group of conscripts, ordinary humans who had been drafted into the Imperial army just days earlier. These conscripts, most of whom had been office workers or farmers a week before, stood in ranks, their laser rifles trembling in their hands. A veteran Imperial Army sergeant, his face scarred from years of war, shouted orders. "Fire!" he yelled. For the Emperor. The conscripts fired, but their shots were wild. The mutants, unaffected by the laser fire, charged forward, tearing the conscripts apart. It was a massacre. The conscripts died by the thousands, their bodies piling up outside the walls. But their sacrifice was not in vain. They slowed the traitors down, giving the Loyalist Astartes time to prepare. The Imperial fists, white scars, and blood angels took up positions on the walls, their weapons ready. Sanguinius, Primarch of the Blood Angels, stood at the front, his white wings outstretched. He had seen a vision of his death, of Horus killing him, and he knew his time was short. As recorded in Sanguinius, the Great Angel, he had woken that morning with a scar on his neck, a scar that matched the one he had seen in his vision. "I will fight until the end," he whispered to himself, "for the Emperor, for my sons." The second wave of traitors arrived, the Death Guard. The 14th Legion, now corrupted by Nurgle, the plague god, marched forward, their power armor covered in rot and disease. They carried plague bombs which they threw into the Loyalist ranks. Any Astartes or human who came into contact with the bombs fell ill, their bodies decaying from the inside out. The Death Guard's Primarch, Mortarion, led the charge. He was a towering figure, his face hidden behind a gas mask, his scythe, silence dripping with poison. The White Scars, led by Jagatai Khan, launched a counterattack. They rode on jet bikes, their blades flashing, and cut through the Death Guard's ranks. Khan, a master of speed and agility, dodged Mortarion's scythe and struck him in the chest. Mortarion roared in pain, but he did not fall. He struck Khan with a blast of poison, and Khan was forced to retreat. As the battle raged, chaos began to break through the Emperor's psychic barrier. The sky turned red, and blood rain fell from the clouds. Lorgar Aurelian, Primarch of the Word-Bearers, used his powers to broadcast a message across Terra. "Abandon the Emperor," he shouted. "He is a liar. Horus will set you free." His words sowed doubt in the minds of the Loyalists. Riots broke out in the Hive cities, and some Imperial army units deserted. Then the daemons came. The Emperor's barrier, weakened by Lorgar's attack, could no longer hold them back. Daemons of Khorne, Nurgle, Slaanesh, and Zenshi poured onto Terra's surface, their laughter echoing through the streets. They attacked Loyalists and traitors alike, their only goal to spread chaos and destruction. Angron, Primarch of the World Eaters and a Daemon Prince of Khorne, led the daemons. He had long since lost his humanity, his body twisted by chaos into a monster with horns and wings. He roared, and the World Eaters, driven into a blood frenzy, charged forward. They hacked and slashed at anything that moved, piling the dead into pyramids of skulls. Fulgrim, Primarch of the Emperor's Children, and a Daemon Prince of Slaanesh, joined him. He led his legion in a campaign of terror, capturing humans and torturing them for pleasure. Sanguinius, seeing the chaos, knew he had to act. He led the Blood Angels into battle, his sword, Wrath of Angels, cutting through daemons and traitors alike. He fought Angron, their blades clashing. Sanguinius's wings were torn, his body covered in wounds, but he did not stop. He struck Angron in the chest, and the Daemon Prince roared in pain. For a moment, it seemed Sanguinius would win, but then Fulgrim attacked from behind. His sword pierced Sanguinius's back, and Sanguinius fell to his knees. "This is your fate," Fulgrim laughed. "Death, oblivion." Sanguinius looked up, his eyes filled with determination. "I will not fall," he said. "Not yet." He pushed himself to his feet and struck Fulgrim in the face, sending the Daemon Prince reeling. Then he turned and ran back to the Sanctum Imperialis, back to the Emperor. The battle for Terra was far from over. The traitors had breached the outer walls, but the Loyalists still held the Sanctum Imperialis. The Emperor, still on the Golden Throne, continued to fight. And Horus, his patience wearing thin, prepared to make his final move. 55 days after the start of the siege, word reached Horus, Guilliman, and the Lion were on their way. The Ultramarines and Dark Angels, having defeated the traitor forces in the Eastern Galaxy, were sailing for Terra. Horus knew he had to act fast. If Guilliman arrived, the Loyalists would outnumber him. He would lose his chance to kill the Emperor and claim the throne. Horus made a bold decision. He ordered the Vengeful Spirit to move into orbit directly above the Sanctum Imperialis. Then he shut down the ship's void shields, a clear invitation to the Emperor. "Come," he broadcast across Terra. "Face me, one-on-one. Let us end this." The Emperor, knowing this was his destiny, accepted. He left the Golden Throne, but not before naming Malcador the Sigillite, his oldest friend and most trusted advisor, to take his place. Malcador, a frail old man with a mind as sharp as a blade, knew the cost of this task. Sitting on the Golden Throne would drain his life force, but he did not hesitate. "I am ready," he said, "for the Emperor, for humanity." As he sat on the throne, his body began to wither. The Golden Throne's energy flowed into him, and he felt his life slipping away. But he held on for the Emperor, for Terra, for all of humanity. The Emperor, accompanied by Sanguinius and Dawn, boarded a teleportation platform. They were to be joined by a squad of custodes and Imperial fists, but chaos interference scattered them. When the Emperor materialized on the Vengeful Spirit, he found himself alone, except for Sanguinius's body. Horus stood over the fallen Primarch, his body twisted by chaos. His once golden armor was now black, his eyes glowing with red light. "Look what you made me do," Horus said, his voice a growl. "You turned me into this. You lied to me. You used me." The Emperor looked at his son, his heart filled with sorrow. "I never lied to you, Horus," he said. "I loved you. I loved you. I still do." Horus laughed. "Love? You know nothing of love. You are a god, and gods do not love. They use, they manipulate. But I am not your pawn. I am a king, and I will rule this galaxy." The final duel began. The Emperor wielding his sword, the sword of the Emperor, a blade forged from starlight and Emperor's own psychic energy, attacked. Horus, using a chaos axe, fought back. The Vengeful Spirit shook as their blades clashed. The Emperor's sword cut through Horus's armor, but Horus's axe struck the Emperor's shoulder, wounding him. "You are weak," Horus sneered. "You always have been. You hide behind your throne, while I fight for what is right." The Emperor did not reply. He focused his psychic energy, summoning the power of the Astronomicon. A wave of light erupted from his body, searing Horus's skin. Horus screamed, but he did not fall. He struck the Emperor in the chest, and the Emperor fell to his knees. "It is over," Horus said. "I win." But the Emperor was not defeated. He reached into Horus's mind, using his psychic powers to show Horus the truth. The Chaos Gods did not care about him. They would use him, then discard him. They would destroy humanity, and Horus would be left with nothing. Horus hesitated. For a moment, the chaos corruption in his body faded. He saw himself as he once was, a loyal son, a great warrior, a hero. "What have I done?" he whispered. It was too late. The Chaos Gods, sensing Horus's doubt, took control. Horus roared, and his body transformed into a monster. His wings became bat-like, his claws grew longer, his teeth sharpened. He attacked the Emperor, but the Emperor was ready. He raised the sword of the Emperor and struck Horus in the heart. Horus fell to the ground, his body dissolving into chaos energy. The Emperor, weakened by the battle, collapsed. Outside, the traitors' fleet began to flee. Without Horus, they had no leader. The daemons, sensing Horus's death, vanished back into the warp. The Loyalists, seeing the traitors retreat, let out a cheer. The siege of Terra was over, but the cost was great. Sanguinius was dead. The Emperor was gravely injured. Malcador, his life force drained by the Golden Throne, turned to dust. The Sanctum Imperialis was in ruins, and Terra was scarred by war. Dawn, finding the Emperor's body, carried him back to the Sanctum Imperialis. He placed the Emperor on the Golden Throne, where the machine's energy began to sustain him. The Emperor's body was dying, but his mind remained. He would continue to guide humanity from the Golden Throne forever. In the aftermath of the siege, the Imperium was forever changed. The Emperor, now a prisoner on the Golden Throne, required 1,000 psychers to be sacrificed every day to keep him alive. His psychic energy continued to power the Astronomicon, guiding Imperial ships through the warp, but he could no longer speak. He was a symbol, a god to some, a prisoner to others. The Loyalist Primarchs, their ranks thinned by war, made a decision to split the Astartes legions into smaller chapters. This second founding, as it was called, was designed to prevent another horusheresy. Each legion was divided into 1,000 strong chapters, each with its own leader and traditions. The Imperial Fists became the Black Templars, the Raven Guard, and others. The White Scars remained intact, as did the Salamanders. The Blood Angels, mourning Sanguinius's death, split into chapters that would carry on his legacy. The Imperium, once a beacon of progress, entered a new dark age. The Imperial Truth, a philosophy of science and reason championed by the Emperor, was abandoned. In its place rose the Adeptus Ministorum, the imperial cult which worshipped the Emperor as a god. The cult's leader, a preacher named Vangilius, convinced the Terra Senate to declare the Emperor a deity. Those who denied his divinity were labeled heretics and executed. Knowledge was lost. The technology of the Great Crusade became a mystery, and the tech priests of Mars began to worship machines as sacred relics. The webway, once a hope for humanity's future, was sealed off, its portals guarded by the few remaining custodes. Vulcan, having fulfilled his mission, left Terra to wander the galaxy. He would return in times of great need, but for now he was gone. As the millennia passed, the Imperium faced new threats. Chaos warbands continued to raid imperial worlds, spreading corruption and destruction. Xenos races, orks, eldar, tyranids attacked from all sides. The Astronomicon's light began to fade, and rumors spread that the Emperor was dying. Statues of the Emperor wept tears of blood, and prophets spoke of the end times. In the 40th millennium, the Imperium is a shadow of its former self. It is a realm of war, poverty, and ignorance, a place where life is cheap and hope is rare. The Astartes, now called Space Marines, fight across the galaxy, but they are few. Mortal soldiers, conscripted from every world, die by the billions. And the Emperor, still on the Golden Throne, continues to watch his mind, a prison, his body a shell. But there is still hope. The Loyalist Primarchs, though scattered, still fight. Guilliman, returned from the dead, leads the Ultramarines in a campaign to save the Imperium. The Lion, hidden in the warp, waits for his moment to return. And Vulcan, the Immortal, walks among humanity, his hammer ready to strike down the enemies of the Emperor. The horusheresy may have ended, but the war for humanity's survival has just begun. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.